The purpose of naming convention is to improve productivity and quality. If everyone on a development team follows the same standards, the result is source code that is easier to read by all members of the team because it is written in a consistent style. Easy to read code is then easier to debug and maintain by all members of the development team. If a standard doesn't exist for the type of code you are writing, then at a minimum it should be coded in a consistent style throughout the program. Source code readability is also the best indication of program quality. If the source code is easy to read, it is probably a good program. If it is hard to read, it probably is not. Camel case. Camel case notation is a common name for the practice of writing compound words or phrases, where the words are joined without spaces and each word is capitalized within the compound. This practice is known by a large variety of names. Camel case is a standard identifier naming convention for several programming languages. Camel case contains three subcategories, which is followed: Pascal case, intercaps, lower camel case. The following example is given below. Microsoft's C# standard is Pascal case.
Class names must be nouns or noun spaces. Do not use any class prefix. Variables. Use meaningful descriptive English-like variable names with capital letters at the start of each words or word segments and lowercase otherwise. Local variables begin with a lowercase letter. Private class variables should have an M prefix. Public variables and should begin with a capital letter. Do not use so-called Hungarian notation prefix. Even for short-lived variables that may appear in only a few lines of code, still use a meaningful name. Use single-letter variable names such as I or J for short loop indexes only. Methods. Use meaningful descriptive English-like methods names with the capital letters at the start of each words or word segments and lowercase otherwise. Methods names should describe what the method does and not how it does it. Method names generally begin with verbs to indicate action, followed by a noun to indicate what they perform that action on. Methods with written values should have a name describing the value returned. Private class methods begin with a lowercase letter. Public methods should begin with the capital letters. Source code files. File names should generally be the names of the class it contains. Consistency. Data items should be named consistently throughout all parts of a program. The names of variables declared class constants and of ANSI constants should be all uppercase with words separated by underscore. For example given below. Variables with a greater range should have longer names and about a smaller scale shorter name. The variable's iteration should be called simple IJK. For loop example given below. There is a order of declaration, the class and interface in the coding structure. First one is documentation. Second one is statement. Third one static variables. Fourth one instance variables. Fifth one constructor. Sixth one methods. These are the order which have to be followed for the well coding structure to follow the best practice. Method modifiers. Java provides mechanism for access control to prevent the users of a package or class from depending on unnecessary details of the implementation of that package or class. In a method declaration, only the following modifiers can occur: public, protected, private, abstract, static, final, synchronized, and native. A method that is declared static is called a class method. A class method is always invoked without reference to a particular object. An attempt to reference the current object using the keywords with or a keyword super in a body of the class method results in a compile time error. It is a compile time error for a static methods to be declared abstract. A method can be declared final to prevent subclasses for overriding or hiding it. It is a compile time error to attempt to override or hide a final method. A method that is native is implemented in platform-dependent code, typically written in another programming language such as C, C++, Fortran, or assembly language. The body of a native method is given as a semicolon only, indicating that the implementation is omitted. Instead of a block, a compile time error occurs if a native method is declared abstract. Synchronized method acquires a lock before it executes. For a class method, the lock associated with the class object for the method class is used. For an instance method, the lock associated with this is used. C# access modifiers. Access modifiers determine the extent to which a variable or method can access from another class object. There are 4 basic access modifier types in C#: public, private, protected, internal. C# and Java both seem to implemented the same set of access modifiers. However, something which has bewildered me for some times now is why Java classes seem to be mostly declared as public while C# classes seem mostly to be declared as default. There are some substitutes to this language which impose these differences, or it is simply a matter of conventions or what? Class variables. In object-oriented programming with classes, a class variable is a variable defined in a class of which a single copy exists, regardless of how many objects of the class exist. A class variable is the opposite of instance variable. It is a special type of class member. A class variable is any field declared with a static modifier. This tells the compiler that there is exactly one copy of these variables in existence, regardless of how many times the class has been instantiated. A field defining the number of gears for a particular kind of bicycle could be marked as static since conceptually the same number of gears will appear to all instances. The code of static integer number equals 6 would create such a static field. Additionally, the keyword final could be added to indicate that the number of gears will never change. Java uses functions to access the variable in a class. The example method is mentioned. C# we make use of properties mechanisms to access the variables in a class.
Comment. A comment is a programming language construct used to embed programmer-readable annotations in the source code of a computer program. These annotations are potentially significant to programmers but typically ignorable to compilers and interpreters. Comments are usually added with the purpose of making the source code easier to understand. The syntax and rules for comments vary and are usually defined in a programming language specification. Don't write comments to document obvious statements. Assume the reader knows the language. Every comment has the potential to create an inconsistency between what the comment says and what the code does. One cause of software rot is that code is changed over time, but comments are not updated. To avoid this, keep comments next to the code that is documented so that they may be more easily synchronized. Type of comment: single line comment, block comment, documentation comment.